To perimenopause hell. This video is about hair. What you may have noticed if you're in later perimenopause and your estrogen levels are starting to get low is that you may be experiencing some hair loss. This is to be expected. It doesn't necessarily happen to all women, but it can be something that you experience when your estrogen levels really start to tank. If you've been pregnant, you might remember that after you had the baby, you experience much the same thing. This is because when you're pregnant, your estrogen levels are nice and high, really quite high, in fact. And then when you deliver the baby, those levels totally crash down. And the difference in the levels of estrogen causes your hair to fall out. But it does usually grow back. And the same is true in menopause also, that when your body gets used to the new lower levels of estrogen, you should start to regrow some of that hair. So it's not all bad news. If you're not quite there yet in terms of perimenopause and your estrogen levels are okay, what you should look into is your thyroid and ask, in fact, get a proper thyroid panel done, because in some places, particularly in the UK, GPs actually can't do a full thyroid panel now. They can only order the basics, and that won't tell you things like if there's antibodies to thyroid hormone there, if you've got autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis and things like that. So sometimes you might need to order a private test. I had that done through a company called Medichecks, and they were very good. It's cheap enough now to be able to do that kind of thing for yourself. Anyhow, so going back to the thyroid, this little snippet of information here says severe and prolonged hypothyroidism, which is not enough thyroid hormone, and hypothyroidism, which is too much, can cause loss of hair. The loss is diffuse and involves the entire scalp rather than discrete areas. The hair appears uniformly sparse. So treatment usually sorts that out. One thing you may notice if you have something wrong with your thyroid is that the outer third of your eyebrows is affected. So that's something to look out for. What we usually suggest in the group is that women who are experiencing hair loss take biotin, which is part of the B vitamin family. As this information says, your body needs biotin to help convert certain nutrients into energy. So it plays an important role in the health of your hair, skin, and nails. There are certain foods that you can eat that are good sources of biotin. Eggs in particular are one of those. But if you don't like eggs, there are lots of other foods. You can do a quick Google search for foods that contain high amounts of biotin, and that will come up for you. One thing that you can also do to stimulate regrowth is to use a few drops of peppermint essential oil mixed in with your shampoo. Now that stimulates the scalp and increases the blood flow to the scalp, which helps regrow the hair. There has actually been medical research studies on this. There's one, if you go to the file on supplements and look at the comments, I've put that study in the comments there, so you can go and look at that. Also, try to remember to be more gentle with your hair these days, because it can change texture. People who have curly hair may notice that their hair is not quite so curly as it was. People who've always had thin hair might develop thicker hair. So it's all change, really. One thing to remember is that wet hair is much more fragile than dry hair. So if you're in the habit of washing your hair and brushing it while it's still wet, it might be a good idea to change that habit, because you might find that it's breaking more easily now that your hormone levels are lower. So what you can do is brush your hair before you have a bath or shower, and then make sure you dry it before you actually brush it again. That's just a little tip there. So if you found this video interesting and informative, do the usual things like subscribe and all that jazz. Thank you for listening.